Hey there, Damien. How are you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Excellent. Let's get some intro tunes for you. This is Damien Meardi from Henning Byrne LLP. Thank you so much for joining us tonight because I appreciate what lawyers do in our process. And I understand that you really do a lot to make sure that there's some smooth sailing when it comes to people navigating the seller market.
I certainly try.
Well, there's lots of prevention to be done. And I think that that's where most of the work is, because like the pound of cure is an awful scenario when it comes to if that ends up being like on the legal side.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I would recommend, or what I tell a lot of the realtors, at least I work with, is if you have a question at the beginning, please ask. The problem with us a lot of times is by the time I see a contract, there's not as much I can do because conditions have passed. So ideally, I know for myself, ideally we be involved as early as possible, just to help through those little things that kind of pop up every once in a while.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we do. I know that Doro's on your phone all the time, chatting about different things, and you've helped her navigate some pretty tricky situations because right now, not only are we seeing offers, we're seeing multiple offers. And I think Tony the other night was in a multiple offer for a backup position. How nervous does that make you?
Sorry?
How nervous does that make you? It's like
not me so much.
with deals, there can be a whole bunch of trouble there, right?
I've seen a few where certainly we're, and it's not really on my end so much, but I've seen a few where sometimes if there's a slight mistake on the broker end or on the realtor end or agent end,
yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
For yourselves.
Yeah, is that sometimes when the market is shifting as fast as it is right now, the access to information about, like, a lot of people have never even heard of a multiple offer for a backup. Like, you've already got the property pending and now there's multiple offers and we follow the regular process and all of a sudden it happens. But sometimes there needs to be a little bit more information exchanged because these things can happen so fast. And is it a backup offer or is it not? And is that property being sold twice is like a lot of the conversation in our office right now, because there can really be some confusion surrounding there. So when somebody's coming into these types of scenarios, we always like for them to ask questions first, but on the selling side, when they're getting ready, can you talk me through RPRs? That seems to be one of the things that is like I can even see with you now, like that's something that's the biggest rub point, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I have an entire presentation on RPRs alone. We can sit here and talk probably for an hour. The biggest thing you have to know is that I'll tell you from my perspective, age doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's from 2002 or 2005 or 2015. It's just if there's any changes, we need a new one. And
so just to give some perspective, an RPR, as we're calling it, is a real property report. Correct. And a real property report, if you were looking for one in your drawer, like maybe you got it from the lawyer when you bought your property and you just want to find it, what you're looking for is a long sheet of paper where it looks like someone who can only draw stickmen made a map of your house.
Right. The older ones, yes. The older ones you would see, and the older ones you'd see a blue stamp that would say compliant. And that would mean everything's good. Thing,
right?
Yes. The newer ones, you'll see a letter go along with it. But again, the important thing that any changes, so some of the things that I've run into is the neighbor puts up a fence. Well, guess what? You still need a new one. We put up a deck, but it didn't need a permit. Still has to be on there. So things like that kind of pop up where people aren't exactly clear as to when they would need to get a new one or when not.
And the purpose of these is to represent to the buyer that what they're buying is what they see, and that the municipality has seen this and said that it's okay.
Yeah. So what we're saying is that all the structures are in the right place, or when they were built, they're in the right place. So what you'll see is sometimes it'll say non-conforming. That just means it's been grandfathered in. When they built it, it was fine, but now it's not. So that's fine.
Because they accept those real property reports in the contract in three ways. Or in two ways. They can be compliant or they can be non-conforming. But they can't be non-compliant. And when we're taking a look at that purchase agreement in residential resale real estate, we're really taking a look at an agreement that's supposed to create equality between the buyer and the seller. And so this is actually written into the standard agreement as part of the protections that we all expect. Where it kind of gets tricky is how it overlaps with the seller agreement, because the seller agreement says that they have about 2 weeks to give the listing brokerage a real property report. But what if they get 10 offers on opening weekend?
Well, then I guess that would be the sort of situation where if you're selling, and especially in a market like this, sorry, I'm just digging for, it's actually may not even be as important as it once would have been, because as a seller in a market like this, if you got multiple offers, you can just say, and this is more, your lane than mine, but if you want it, you're going to take title insurance.
So that's the solution that we hear a fair amount of the time. And what you're saying is when you have the leverage, you could do that. And when you were saying that it's a little bit my lane, I can agree but I can also say it might cost you. Meaning that if you had an RPR with compliance and everybody had so much confidence in your property, they may show it with their dollars. Whereas if you have to go back and say, we got your offer, but since the standard language says that we're going to provide you a real property report with compliance, then we would be in a position where we'd have to counter. And yeah, it could still turn out okay, but it could still end up being something that makes somebody nervous. It depends on the buyer, because they might have been in a rodeo last time, right? Where, oh, the neighbor put up a fence, so we didn't need one. And then you find out that the fence is in the wrong spot. It's the wrong height. And the neighbor across the street complains. Yes. So that's when we're getting off to these things. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying prevention's where it's at. So if you're going to bring your house to the market, be early, get that real property report so that you can determine when compliance is going to, so you can have compliance.
That would be the best scenario, yes. So by the time it even gets to contract, that stuff's done. The other alternative is it's a mad dash to the end. And we're negotiating holdbacks in the last couple of days in order to get the deal closed in time. And it's a pain for the seller for sure.
So the fact that we maintain a relationship with you as a trusted expert is a huge asset to us, because then we can make these changes on the front end. And to give somebody perspective, like let's say that we're in this process, somebody wants to list their property, we bring it to the market, all of a sudden we're getting offers in, we understand enough to call you and say, hey, listen, we're getting offers on this place, but we don't really want to sign something committing us to getting an RPR with compliance because we haven't seen one yet. What if it's different than what we expect? And that's where you would give us normally advice to say, okay, can you get title insurance? And if not, we might talk about other solutions like a seller's condition.
Yeah.
So there's a few different ways to kind of skin this cat, but tell me another, like the thing that we normally want to talk to people about when it comes to lawyers is how to take up as little of your time as possible. And what I mean by that is that we want a smooth process where you're not using the H word like holdbacks. That's not part of a regular real estate deal.
No, it's not optimal, that's for sure. And a lot of times as a seller, I mean, when it comes to a holdback scenario, if I'm acting for a seller, the way it'll usually work, or if I'm acting for a buyer, the way it'll work is I'm going to ask for enough to cover what the problem is, and enough to make sure that the actual seller does what they're supposed to do. Now, if I'm acting for a seller, again, it's the same sort of thing, but we want to lower that as much as possible if there is a holdback. So holdbacks will say, for instance, there's a deck that's non-compliant, or there's a deck without a permit. Deck's worth $5,000. We're going to try and get to hold back as little as possible from our client. The other side's going to try and get us to hold back as much as possible.
So I like how you put that, because we really love the fact that you're taking a look at it from their perspective. And you say that, like, this isn't just a process. We don't just check the boxes. When we're working for sellers, we're looking for optimal situations. When we're working for buyers, we're looking for optimal situations. And that's exactly how we act as a real estate team as well. We love the fact that we're all in it to win it. The clients that we serve are important to all of us. And we all look at it like, when you're done here, is this something that you're proud of? Like, do you feel as though you were steered the right direction and you made the right calls and it cost the right amount of money and you didn't need a whole bunch of contingency funds?
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing is if you're selling and you look at things from the buyer's perspective, it helps you anticipate any problems that are going to pop up. So the way I try and look at it is, if I was acting for the buyer, this is what we'd be looking at. So when I'm acting for a seller, I can sit down with the clients and we can say, this is what's going to happen most likely. They're going to ask for this, 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 and this. We're going to counter with this, and it'll end up here. So if you're looking at it from the other side's perspective, it'll help you anticipate all these little things that pop up, and everything goes smoother then.
I totally agree. And that's exactly what we want. So when sellers are getting tooled up to sell, when is it the right time to contact you?
Um, my preference, and again, it depends on the situation, right? It could, if it's a fairly straightforward, it's not really necessary. That being said, I am always available on the phone if there's any questions. So if there's a question, by all means, it's a good time to contact me. But if there's any little things that the things that I see pop up the most are just little items. So say we were talking a little earlier, a movable shed. I'll have sometimes agents will call and say, what do we do about this movable shed, or how should we structure a clause in the contract and the other terms section that deals with this movable shed. So stuff like that. If ideally it would be before condition date is always the best time to contact me. For a seller, it's right away if there's any kind of question, really.
Yeah, so all the stuff is in preparation. We're normally talking to you once conditions are removed, but we're always talking to you if anything moves or shakes before then. So if a seller says like, hey, I don't have permits for this deck, do I need an RPR? We often are way more comfortable saying, you know what, why don't you have a conversation with Damien? Because you're going to be able to describe it to him. And because he's represented so many buyers, he's going to tell you how they're going to treat you as you approach this, because they're going to be getting advice as well. And so I like how you're able to take that empathetic position that really helps in helping them gain perspective. Now, is there anything else that you are really hoping in our turbulent market will take place? Like if you could get a message out to everybody that was going to sell in 2021, I think the first message is pay attention to your real property reports. It should be one of the earliest things that you do in listing your property, right? Now, is there anything else that you would like to see? Like maybe you could have a big Damien billboard that helps everyone. What should we put on it?
I think a couple of little things I always tell sellers is insurance. Make sure you cancel. And it sounds so commonsensical, but make sure you cancel your insurance. But cancel your insurance a couple of days after the closing date is a big thing for me that I always tell people. Because what happens if it doesn't close on time? And the 1 in 10,000 chance a place burns down, that one night it's not insured. So the other piece of advice I give sellers all the time, keep it insured a few extra days, just in case. It'll cost you 20, 30 bucks, but it's well worth it.
That's great advice. I don't think a lot of people think of that. They think it's like on and off, and they don't understand that like possession day is a day. It's not possession hour. It's not possession minute. So if you don't have insurance on possession day until those keys change hands, like it's your deal if something happens.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are out of the seller's control. So, who is the buyer's lender? Is the buyer's lender on the ball? Did they get instructed properly? Is everything ready to go? And if everything's not ready to go, it's not closing. And if it's not closing and your insurance is canceled on closing day, it's going to sit for a day or 2 or 3. I've seen things close a couple of weeks after, which, yeah, not optimal.
Wow. When somebody has to look at their living condition over a couple of weeks because something isn't closing and it's an order of operation thing, what comes to my mind is that they may be working with a law office that doesn't specialize in real estate. Because the biggest difference that I see is that when we work with you, you understand what it looks like when the trains aren't running on time, and early, right? Early when the documents didn't show up on time.
And this is kind of more of a buyer side. So I don't, when I'm acting for a buyer, for instance, and this is kind of where that'll come in, is if their lawyer's taking some steps. So if I don't have what I need from a bank on a buyer side, usually I'll be on the phone and letting them know we're still waiting on this stuff. We have to get this done. On the seller side, one of the things that I'll do is if I don't have my documents or I don't have confirmation everything's good to go, it's as simple as picking up the phone and calling, the other side, the other lawyer, to make sure things are still good to go.
Well, that's awesome. And we appreciate you being the phone call that our clients can have. That's why we count you among our trusted experts. So everybody can find you at Henning Byrne LLP, barristers and solicitors. You guys are easy and convenient for those people on the south side. It's nice to be able to have somebody that you can call early and you can call often if you have any questions. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Damien. We appreciate your insight into some of the things that can make somebody's process smoother.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this.